Finland is making headlines with a bold move, expanding its military force to 1 million personnel. The reason? A rising threat from Russia. At the same time, NATO is conducting massive joint military exercises aimed squarely at deterring Moscow. And as of May 15th, all NATO members have agreed to ramp up their defense budgets to 5% of GDP. Germany, meanwhile, is rolling out a new military initiative to build the strongest army in Europe. But according to experts, replacing American military support in Europe will take at least 25 years and cost over $1 trillion. Let's start with what's triggered this rapid shift: Russia's sweeping military reforms and troop buildup near NATO's borders. Finland, which shares a long border with Russia, is especially alarmed. The Finnish military intelligence agency warns that Moscow plans to expand its armed forces by 350,000 soldiers, with 50,000 of them stationed in the Leningrad military district just across the Finnish border. If the war in Ukraine winds down, Russian troop numbers in that district could swell from 30,000 to 80,000. And in Murmansk, the 14th Russian Army Corps is also set to grow, with some of its bases now sitting just a few kilometers from Finnish and Norwegian territory. That's a red line for Helsinki. So, Finland is preparing to boost its total armed forces, including reserves, to 1 million. But hold on. Finland only has a population of 5.58 million. Are they planning to draft nearly every able-bodied citizen? Not quite. This million-man army is largely built on a restructured reserve system. Currently, enlisted Finnish soldiers remain in the reserves until age 50 or 60. Naval personnel retire at 50, while officers and non-commissioned officers can serve until the end of the year they turn 60. But now, the Finnish Ministry of Defense is proposing to raise the reserve age limit to 65 for anyone born in 1966 or later. That means any fit and qualified officer would remain in reserve status well into their 60s. Over the next 5 years, this policy could add 125,000 reservists to the ranks. By 2031, Finland's reserve force is projected to reach about 1 million. Defense Minister Anni Häkkänen emphasized that expanding the reserve force is a direct investment in national security. Though the proposal is still under public consultation, its message is clear: Finland is rearming. And it's not doing this alone. During this transition, Finland is tightening military cooperation with NATO. From May 23rd to June 1st, over 5,000 NATO troops, including forces from the US and UK, along with 700 pieces of equipment, will take part in joint exercises near Finland's Russian border. Another major drill began on May 12th in Lapland, involving Finnish, Swedish, and British forces. A total of 6,500 soldiers are participating. These exercises are no mystery. They're clearly aimed at Russia. And the fact that Finland is not just hosting but leading some of these drills shows that NATO now sees it as a frontline state in the effort to contain Moscow. These war games allow NATO forces to quickly familiarize themselves with Finland's combat tactics. They also help integrate Finland and other Nordic members into NATO's joint operations framework. But Finland is just one part of a larger European military transformation. On May 15th, all NATO members agreed to raise defense-related spending to 5% of GDP. Of that, 3.5% will go directly to military budgets, while 1.5% will be allocated to infrastructure and cybersecurity. To put this into perspective, NATO's combined GDP is nearly 54 trillion US dollars. Even without the United States, the remaining NATO members collectively generate about 25.2 trillion. 5% of that is $1.26 trillion. That figure alone exceeds the entire 2024 U.S. defense budget of $880 billion. Among the first to commit to this new 5% benchmark are Lithuania and Estonia, both former Soviet republics. Lithuania has even hinted it may push its defense spending to 6% of GDP. Meanwhile, Germany is launching its own military revival. On May 14th, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz delivered his first address to the Bundestag. He outlined his top priorities, revitalizing the German economy and turning it once again into Europe's growth engine. But the real headline came when he declared that Germany will build the strongest army in Europe to counter the growing threat from Russia. Merz promised full financial backing, including a €1 trillion investment to modernize Germany's infrastructure. He also announced plans to reinstate mandatory military service and expand the Bundeswehr to 400,000 troops. Yes, the German war machine is coming back, not for conquest, but for defense. Merz said this move is a response to the expectations of allies and partners. On Ukraine, Merz made his position clear. Forcing Ukraine into peace or accepting a Russian-imposed status quo is unacceptable. He called for unity among European nations, stressing that the outcome of the war in Ukraine will shape the future of the global order. He also acknowledged the importance of a U.S. alliance, but warned that Europe must develop its own independent defense system. French President Emmanuel Macron shares that view. He has already agreed to begin talks with other European leaders about deploying strategic nuclear-capable aircraft. Add to that the revival of European arms production and an €800 billion rearmament plan, and it's clear Russia has inadvertently kick-started Europe's military renaissance. Germany is rearming. France is preparing for nuclear deterrence. Even the smaller NATO states are increasing defense spending. But can Europe truly replace the military might of the United States? Not anytime soon. According to a report released by the International Institute for Strategic Studies on May 15th, replacing U.S. military support in Europe would take at least 25 years and cost over $1 trillion. If the U.S. were to fully withdraw, NATO's European members would face a huge capability gap, especially against potential Russian aggression. The report estimates that duplicating U.S. assets would require $226 to $344 billion in one-time procurement, including weapons, equipment maintenance, and training. The most expensive items? 400 fighter jets, 20 destroyers, and 24 long-range surface-to-air missile batteries. Replacing 128,000 U.S. personnel during a major conflict would cost an additional $12 billion. And that doesn't even cover hard-to-quantify capabilities like intelligence, command structures, and nuclear deterrence. For example, the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, NATO's second-highest military post, has always been held by an American. If the U.S. pulls out, Europe would need serious diplomatic coordination to fill such leadership roles. Simply put, replacing U.S. power in Europe will require time, sustained political commitment, and massive financial investment. And there's one more catch. Europe's defense industry must be able to meet the growing demand. That means fixing supply chain bottlenecks, training skilled workers, and easing financing and regulatory barriers. Without that, even the best-funded defense plans could fall short.